Hello and welcome to Our Town Has Plenty and Linda King.
Hello.
Legend
Hello.
of our parish.
Hello.
Wow. We were chatting, we had a bit of preamble. Talking about strong women in this town. I've always thought of you as one of those women.
I just kind of got on with stuff.
Yeah.
There were things that I wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have the opportunity to do them, so I just got on with it. And then when other things arose, like from when I was running my gallery in the High Street, Fab and Groovy, I met so many people through that, because you're kind of sitting target if you're in a shop, there's nowhere else to go.
Absolutely.
And because I was there and I was producing batiks and my own work and having exhibitions there, and we had a really big demographic, because in those days, which is back in the, I guess, where were we? The late 80s, early 90s.
Absolutely.
And the Old Town was a very, very different place.
Is that when you came here?
I moved here in 1986.
Yeah.
I'd been in Rye for a couple of years before then, doing
Just after me?
some properties. Yeah, quite so.
Mm.
And then I'd actually moved up from Cornwall with my mum.
Mm.
So we lived in Rye for a couple of years, did up a couple of properties, decided we needed somewhere a bit more, I don't know, a bit more many-layered than Rye, a bit more interesting, a bit more art scene, because it's a beautiful place, but it's not Hastings. And also I wanted to go and do a foundation course, so when the college was at Archery Road, which was, that was a time in itself, absolutely, and we had some really good lecturers like Rod Harmon and Ian Brown, people like that, and it was brilliant to go and do that. So when I finished that 1-year foundation course, I started my first Fab and Groovy, which was down the alleyway beside the Anchor, where I sold hair dye. All kinds of people bought that hair dye. It's when I had hair and I was dyeing it a lot, and vintage clothes. And I gradually kind of established this kind of, and realised that there was a kind of massive gap for the kind of shop that I would like to find if I went to a town and didn't expect to find it. So this property came up for sale up the High Street, and my mum came in with me, and we bought this lock-up shop nearly opposite the Electric Palace Cinema with a massive window. And kind of grew into that and did exhibitions of local artists about 2 or 3 times a year, and I painted the posters, and it was all very integrated into other things that were going on. And the window was a brilliant opportunity to promote stuff as well. But I also sold cards and jewellery and some imported stuff and things that I would like to buy for myself or for other people.
Oh, totally.
And I stocked local ceramics by Gopsall Pottery. So it was a real mixture of different things. But we had a really good following, and people still come up and talk to me about it. God, that was years ago, but people remember it, and people who were tiny kids remember being brought in.
Well, it was a wonderland.
I guess in comparison to what else was available, there really wasn't very much.
It was quite dry.
Well, there was a lot of, at that point,
There were antique
building
dealers.
societies.
Yeah, there were. Look, there were building societies and antique dealers. Lots of pine everywhere.
A lot of pine.
A lot of pine. Do you remember that?
Pine.
And there was, and you ended up looking at all the antique dealers had bry wax, stacks of bry wax in the window.
I could get high on bry wax. Terrible stuff. Anyway, so the shop was great. The shop was great, but I did that for about 7 years, and then I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do with it, and it wasn't a great time for selling property at that point, so I had a series of, funnily enough, antique dealers in there after that, and then it was the Old Town Bookshop for a long time, so I had that for about 20 years, and then, so when I finished doing the shop, I kind of keeled over for a while, because it had been a very intense period, and when I'd finished keeling over and got my act together again, I started working in community arts, because Same Sky were doing residency in Hastings and St Leonard's. It's part of a 3 or 4 year project, and Angie Biltcliffe kind of collared me, and I got involved in doing community arts. And what was good about that was that I ended up making the sort of stuff that I would never have made on my own. So I was making great big things out of withies and lanterns.
That's very
and
Biltcliffe, isn't it?
well, yeah, I mean, she'd worked with Same Sky in Brighton for a few years, and so she basically helped bring that idea here. And when they did the residency, there was this sort of time limit on it, and it was meant to spawn, as it were, another company that was Hastings based at this end, and that did happen, which was Radiator Arts, which is still going now in a different way. But then, of course, you know, everything changes.
These things morph and change.
They do, absolutely. And you know, again, this is a great town for morphing and changing in. And I think a lot of people come here trying to find themselves, and they kind of lose themselves for a bit, and then they kind of find something completely different.
Does it give you permission, Hastings? Because I always felt it affords.
Yeah, it's an arena.
It is. Yeah,
it's an arena for people to do stuff, and because it's quite because there's lots of festivals and parties and things like that here, which has kind of grown a bit more established over the years, because you've got Jack in the Green and Fat Tuesday and the Carnival, and there's so many other events happening in between now. It's like it's an all the year round place, and you know, you get an influx of different people coming in who have other skills. COVID changed things a lot, because a lot of more people started working at home, and then a lot of people also rethought how they wanted to live their lives.
Sure.
And so they wanted to move away from the big centres and go somewhere where they had an arena to try different things, whether it's galleries or art or performance or restaurants, and that's really what keeps the place alive, because it's had that over the years. I mean, there was a big jazz scene here in the 60s, wasn't there? And it's great, because it's like the baton keeps being passed on.
It does. The artisan remains. How it manifests is another matter.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
and that kind of, I suppose that moves with the times, with technology and things like that too. I mean, Zero have been amazing, you know, doing Bottle Alley, and their commitment to Bottle Alley, and getting the installations in there, and getting it painted, and bringing the community into it, and then doing the art market, which was amazing. I did the first one,
wasn't it?
and it was a stampede.
It was a hug fest, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was great, because you saw everybody who's usually beavering away in their studios somewhere, and suddenly everybody was out. And I think that, again, that's kind of given permission for other events to happen here. You know, the big craft event that's happened recently in the Observer Building. There's the Yard, of course, by Morrison's, which has got loads of artist studios in, and has a regular market every month. So the people who are there can then show their wares and have these very lively markets.
St Andrew's Market, which was St Andrew's Muse.
Yeah, that's doing amazing
they're all
things.
sort of lifting, which I'm loving that.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Even in 10 years, actually, thinking about when I came, it was Britannia Works at the
Yard. Britannia Works.
It was just such a different thing to what it is
raw
now.
iron guys.
And that it's kind of bubbling.
Yeah, it's got a lot more mixed. The different kinds of businesses and artists who are there. You know, you've got Mirabell Paul doing some giant mirables and stuff. You've got Basil. You've got Basil's Fungi Farm, which is incredible. And it's just fantastic to see all these different ways that people are bringing something new and different.
So, what brought you to art? What you and art? What's that
Well,
about?
you can't really escape if it's in your genes. It's what you do. So I never really thought about it. I always drew a lot when I was a kid. The only person who never complimented me was I had an art teacher who used to stand behind me and go, "You'll never amount to anything, King." I know. But she was called Miss Skull, so that kind of that tells you everything you need to know.
That sounds like envy, though, Linda, doesn't it?
I don't know. She was a very strange woman.
She's a very narrow-minded art teacher as well.
Well, I know. I mean, honestly, I went to Foy Comprehensive in Cornwall, which is a great big 60s building on top of the hill, and the whole thing with teaching and school was very different then, indeed. And because I was, without even trying to be, clearly a bit not like a lot of other people, I did get bullied a lot at school, and that was no fun. But it's sort of character building, but it kind of didn't hold me back.
Did it give you material?
I don't think it gave me material. I think it just made me more bloody minded.
That's what I meant.
Oh, right.
So not necessarily.
It was fuel.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Fuel. Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, I can't really complain. I mean, academically, I'm a bit of a dum-dum, but I have a different kind of brain, which has a different kind of intelligence. I'm quite Well, actually, I was born in the year of the rat, and I'm quite rat.
Me too.
What are you?
Industrious.
The ram or the
Oh,
goat?
okay, you should ram
Yeah.
to go to the sheep.
Sheep,
Okay.
one of those.
Yeah. No, I like being a rat
Because
because they're survivors.
they are. You'll always find them finding a way round a situation. Rats don't travel across the floor; they
No.
go around everything.
They work it out.
That's
They
what I was
work it
thinking.
out.
Yeah, when you said, there's a certain type of, rubber stamped intelligence that's coming from, schooling. But in terms of how you fix spaces, make things work for you, find a different route, and recreate and reinvent. That's
Being resourceful and using what you've got, and those are the things in any situation in life are what going to save you bacon. Actually.
Yeah.
And also, it kind of just makes it more interesting.
Mm.
I mean, even when I was sort of setting up this morning, I was sort of like, right, how am I going to do this and what am I going to do so that I know when because I swine for thinking ahead and putting myself in other people's shoes, and I really try and accommodate things. So I turn myself inside out trying to accommodate things, and that sometimes can be to my own detriment because I have burnt out a few times in my life.
Yeah, imagine.
But I mean, it's good when you're working with and for other people. It's a really useful skill to have, like working with Radiator, because I did a lot of project management and that kind of stuff. And you need to be able to do that because you've got to kind of think for the whole group and make sure that things are in place, and production managing as well. And then I've done a lot of work not recently, but I worked with Plunge Creations down in Port Slade, the other side of Brighton, and they make amazing sets and costumes and things like that. And I went to Cologne with them, and it's kind of taken me to.
You've
all
travelled the
sorts
world,
of,
though, haven't you?
well, not the world, but I mean, I've done a lot of collaborative work with Chris Winter, who's a Hastings artist who works between Hastings and Berlin, and we've known each other since Foundation.
Yeah.
We met Foundation when he was a sweet 19-year-old, and I was a little bit older, and we kind of hit it off immediately. And we're still friends, and he and his partner have a house in the Old Town now, but he still spends like half the year in Berlin because that's where his kind of client base is.
Yeah.
He's a kind of,
He's
internationally
very
known
creative,
artist.
isn't he?
Yeah, Chris is amazing. I mean, he's a proper professional artist, and it's a very tough world out there, the gallery scene, and he has to do everything. He doesn't have an agent, you're kind of on your own. So yeah, all the publicity and the meetings and the setting things up and the admin and the insurance and the shipping is all down to him. And he works in a very different.
Isn't it?
Well, it's a lot of artists work like that. I mean, there are so many different ways of doing stuff. I mean, the way that I've done it is I've always done other stuff alongside, like either community arts or painting and decorating or, whatever brings in some extra money, or working for Plunge, which was brilliant because I met some really, really clever people, and they're a fantastic company to work for. But, it took me to places and made me work on stuff that I would never have done. We ended up, I was one of a crew, I think there was 3 or 4 of us, who were involved in the painting and finishing of 2 life-size oak trees, which were made down in the workshops. Well, they were destined for Madame Tussauds for the Sherlock Holmes experience.
Oh, okay.
So because I'm lucky, having worked with community arts, lots of experience in getting things installed, but that was an interesting job. They had to be manhandled down a very it was quite a wide staircase, but it was in a spiral.
Oh God.
It was a nightmare because it was in the basement, and it had been the French Revolution room.
Right.
So I opened the door. We had to do it overnight as well. We had to do it over a couple of nights, obviously. So we're there, like trying to work all night, which is actually actual hell. With these trees, and we put them together, and we started doing all these paint finishes on them, more or less in the dark because there wasn't any other lighting.
Yeah.
And it actually turned out looking amazing. And they had a sort of steel core, and then there was lots of spray foam and stuff involved, and then all this painting involved. But at one point I was going off to find something, and I opened the door into the other room, and there's all these dead aristocrats lying on the floor. They've been part of the French Revolution set.
That's brilliant.
So I was like, hello.
Sorry.
Heads rolling around and things.
Heads rolling, literally. All very
Literally
good.
that, yeah. And with festival work, I worked with the Arabian Tent Company. I started off in my van with about 7 characters accidentally at Small World Festival in Kent, which is a solar festival and full of music. And I worked with a couple of people on this little stage called the Curbside Cabaret. And I did that, and then halfway through that I had a phone call saying, "Are you free to do Bestival?" I was like, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah, that's
There's a little field in Kent to this massive...
Yeah.
Well, that actually, Bestival, I think was about... I did it a couple of times, and I think when I did it the first time it was about 13,000 or 17,000 people, and it quickly escalated to a lot
so
more.
It's not like that now.
But yeah, so I packed up everything and I drove down to get the ferry, very expensive crossing, got the ferry across with my van full of my stuffed horse, Cupid, and everything. And, you know, the guys who are security on festival sites, they're a mixed bunch. Sometimes they get a little bit power crazy, and you know, obviously they've got to stop people from, you know, blagging in to get in free. So I'm waiting for 2 hours trying to get onto the festival site because the guys won't let me in, and the woman who I'm working for, Catherine at the Arabian Tents, was flying around doing stuff, and the phone wasn't being answered. I was just getting I was tired. I'd left really early in the morning. I was like, I said, "Do you expect me to drive back to Hastings because you won't let me on the site?" I said, "Come with me for a minute." So he looked a bit like that, and I said, "Come on, it's all right, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to hurt you. It's fine." So I opened the side loading door of my van and I pointed at it. I said, "Do you think that I would bother to load all of this stuff? Look at this horse, all of this costume, just to get a free ticket to get on site." And I guess you've got a point then. Yeah. And he finally let me in. I was like, "Oh, for God's sake." Anyway, and then Catherine appeared. Anyway, that was great. We were in the 24-hour field, and it was mad. It was a loose tea tent, so it was done up like your nan's sitting room. So it was all chintz and lamps and hideous cat paintings and things like that.
I love the idea of a loose tea tent.
It was mad. Well, that's how Vi and Hilda were born.
Oh.
Vi and Hilda were I was Violet, one of my old lady characters, and then Catherine's sister Ro was also there helping out, and I had enough stuff from jumble sales and charity shops and wigs, canes and budgerigars, and so
Statutory budget.
very important, darling, absolutely. I never travelled without a stuffed budgie. So she became Hilda, and we developed these characters just by being at festival on the side, and it was an absolute hoot. And we had somebody drive a car in, and their band played on top of the car. It wasn't strictly allowed to happen, but a lot of things happened in that tent that weren't strictly allowed to happen. I think festivals have become a very different thing now. I think there was a lot more freedom to experiment and just lark about.
The original Glastonbury.
I've seen the film of that.
The original Glastonburys were very, very out there, paganistic type, with torches and all sorts of lit torches. It looked more like Lewis than it did than Glastonbury looks like now.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand why, having done, you know, health and safety and all of that, why you can't really let a whole load of people loose in a field with various complementary things to imbibe.
Things to imbibe.
And fire.
No.
You know, it's not going to end well, is it, really? No. But, I mean, you know, it's
called the Burning Man.
That is the Burning Man. Yeah, leave no trace, though. And there's plenty of trace left after most festivals. Yeah, that's for sure. So, yeah, I had my period of doing that, which was really good fun. But again, it's like with a lot of things that I do, I sort of then move forward onto another thing, and I don't always decide. It kind of organically happens, but you have to make space for it, and that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Because I spent a lot of last year making space to do this. Yeah, sure. So this was my sitting room, and the other 2 rooms that I'm using for the Last Hurrah were 2 bedrooms. But when I first bought the house, I did a loft conversion, so that's where I'm living at the moment. But in order to move up there, I had to get rid of loads of my materials. So they all went. I've got rid of nearly everything, actually. Either given it away or donated it or sold it. I had haberdasheries outside last year. And then I was able to move upstairs in September, which then I started to be able to think about what I was going to do down here, because all of this was behind the eaves upstairs or down in the shed at the bottom of the garden. So I've been playing the tile game for the last 2 years. I moved that over there. It takes a surprisingly long time, and I haven't been 100% well either. So my energy levels have been compromised a bit. So I'm kind of getting on top of that now. But I think also with things going out of the door and being able to move on is, you know, very psychologically healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I was feeling suffocated.
I was going to say,
My
surely
word.
this
Good
is
word.
cathartic.
Oh, hugely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. It doesn't
Yeah.
just happen.
Well, you've created a lot of work, so it's going to create a lot of work.
Well, I know. It's like it's the same at the end as it is at the beginning. You know,
Yeah.
you've just got to put your shoulder to the wheel and get
Yeah.
on with it. And a lot of it's been really interesting and really good fun. And I've had some sort of feedback about some of the things that I've sold. I've sold some books to the lovely Black Gull bookshop.
Oh.
Chris Overfield, such a nice guy. Did
He's
a window
so sweet.
display in there in February and March, which was kind of like a pilot for this, which was quite nice to do because it kind of made a link, you know, because I love stories and things. It's all about
Was that the dress?
That was it's in the other room.
Oh.
Yeah, the birdcage one.
Yeah.
That dress, the birdcage outfit, was made for my friends Jake and Ian. When they got married, they had the most amazing after party the next night at the Ironmongers Hall in the Barbican, and it's incredible in there. It is, well, the closest thing that I can relate it to is it's very in set. If it was a set design, it was very kind of like Harry Potter. It's got the black and white checkered floors. It's got the amazing oak staircase, which has got incredible creatures carved into them and everything. So anyway, the brief for us to dress the hall from Jake and Ian was Gothic fairy tales, and they bought lots of different props and had a sort of plan, which somehow disappeared. But we got it all together anyway. But my job was to greet people at the door, and so Madame Fitzcarraldo, for it is she, was the costume that I made specifically for that.
Oh,
and so it's kind of the story behind that is she was an opera singer, and something happened in her life and she started turning into a bird in a cage.
Oh, God.
So she's like
That's
the bird in
tragic.
the gilded cage
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I have the bird
Very
headdress and the cage and the cage door that you can get your dinner plate through. Very important.
Oh,
Very
very
important things with
important.
costumes, chaps.
Of course. You've got
You've got to-
bathrooms.
You've got to be able to go to the loo.
Yeah.
Got to be able to eat. Got to be able to walk up and down stairs.
Sit down.
Absolutely.
Sit down. Yeah.
that's
And
a
I've
big
managed
one.
all of
I've had
that.
that. It was a cardboard, you kind of computer robot, and ended up almost garrotting myself.
Cardboard is
Think
always
about-
such a good idea,
Yeah.
but you've really got to think about how you're going to move in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a cheap, well, it's a free material. There's so much cardboard in the world. And there's some amazing cardboard technicians and artists out there. Like there's a guy I follow on Instagram, which is another, actually Instagram I found amazing over the years because I've met other artists through it. It's
Isn't
a
it
fantastic
brilliant medium,
platform.
isn't
It
it?
really is. I mean, there will come a point where I'll probably back away from it because it's been figured quite largely in my life in the last few years. But my life needs to change in different ways. You know, you require different things as you get older and you've done different things. And so at some point I'll probably like reverse quietly out of it. But for now, you know,
Quietly.
it's been incredible.
Quietly.
Well, no, that's what I do. When
Yeah.
I leave a party, I don't
Yeah.
go around saying goodbye
No,
to
no,
everybody.
you don't.
I just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
disappear, and then about an hour later, people say, "Where the hell's Linda gone?" She's vanished.
Well, you enter. Whenever I've seen you enter anything, you've always taken my breath away. Whenever we've turned up at anything, one of the most memorable, I think, is seeing you at the Mardi Gras ball.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And you went full Linda with
Yeah,
and
the peacock mohican.
yeah,
for that
you
one, didn't I?
did. It was just
Something.
it was just extraordinary. So the headdresses, they're such a big thing.
Well, the thing is, when I had hair, I never knew what to do with it. I had a very bad perm when I was 14. I never really recovered. So I got to a certain age. It just became kind of accessory. That's when I started dyeing my hair and doing stuff with that. And I went through years of like fluffing mohicans and beehives and all of that stuff. And then I then I shaved my hair off and got my head tattooed. So another great way of actually using this space above here
Yeah.
is headdresses and wigs. And actually I suit wigs way better than I ever suited hair. And I don't know why that is, it's bizarre. But people always, when I have when I've used wigs in the past, and I've got like the Valentine blue big auburn wig on and stuff, and people will say, gosh, you look amazing with hair. And it's like, yes, but if this was my hair, it wouldn't. I would just look weird.
Sure.
But because it's a wig and it's a character,
Yeah.
which brings its own thing to it, then it works in a really different way. And the great thing about wigs and headdresses, you can stitch the headdress to the wig, and so it never falls off. Which is, you know,
Which you can't on a head.
when you're running around a festival site or
Exactly.
jumping up and down, you can't really be doing this all the time.
No, exactly.
So yeah, wigs are great for that because I've got natural Velcro. Obviously, when I get a 5 o'clock shadow, the wig stays on. So you don't need a wig cap. It's a bit slidey until the 5 o'clock shadow happens, and then it actually holds the whole thing on. Yeah, it all works perfectly. So again, resources.
Yeah.
It's all about resources.
Sure.
Yeah, you're a wig technician as well. All of it, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, with the costume thing, I'm not a seamstress. I'm not technically trained in any way. I can just about use a sewing machine if
You
I'm
cobble?
made to. I cobble. I'm chief cobbler.
Yeah.
I style things together and then I add stuff to it, and that's how I've always worked, because I get a feel for something, get a mannequin, get a few basic things that I thought, oh, that might work or that might work, either from my own wardrobe or I channel things from charity shops.
Oh, yeah.
I need something to work for this.
Sure.
And then I'll go and something will leap out at me from
Nice.
somewhere. And I often recycle stuff from other costumes.
Yeah.
I did a lot of costumes. I have ended up with a lot of things which have got red, white, black, gold and silver.
Nice.
And that means that they can be interchangeable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all my characters are related because they all wear the same wigs. So
Yeah.
there's a kind of weird family tree somewhere in the ether of all of my characters.
That'd be fun to map out, actually.
I've thought about it for a long time actually, because they really are
That'd be
linked.
quite a beautiful thing.
I mean, there are some characters which are have been used a lot more, like Valentine Blue. There's also Lady Kitty Mountjoy and her alter ego, Black Dick, the Highwayman.
Yeah.
I used to go around festival sites with posters which say "Wanted Black Dick."
Oh, we're not supposed to be laughing at that, but we are.
Well, I'm sorry, but I was brought up in that time. I was born in 1960,
Yeah, you and me
so
both.
all my formative years was like Kenneth Williams,
It was.
Round the Hall.
Yes.
It was all the Benny Hill
1960s,
stuff.
70s humour.
It was all that humour where there were a lot of things which are terribly non-new now, and understandably so. But I've always liked the sort of the double entendre.
Absolutely.
Has been about the only French I can speak. So I love all of that, and I love kind of visual jokes and physical theatre and physical jokes, because they're so basic. It's like, when I strap my horse on and it's got these fake legs here to make it look like I'm riding it, but then underneath are my legs, so I'm sort of running along, and I used to get children come and say, "There's somebody underneath your horse," because their brain can't work out how this thing is moving.
No, exactly.
And then they see these legs underneath there, and I've always really liked, like Rod Hull and Emu, and all that silly, ridiculous humour.
same.
But it kind of does something to your brain as well, and I've loved that.
Me
And,
too.
Yeah.
I can't escape
It's
it.
great.
A little bit of slapstick or corny.
Yeah.
It's just
Terrible
corny.
puns.
It's terrible
I mean,
puns.
so many of my characters and my things that I've put on, like the cabarets, riddled with terrible puns.
But great.
But they appeal to the child in everybody.
do.
For sure.
And you can hear everybody
Sniggering. Yeah, I know,
Exactly.
snorting and sniggering. Which is, it's good for your health, I think.
I was thinking about that handbag that you turned into a kind of quite beautiful hat for an art gallery opening or something.
That's right, that was in Berlin with Chris, and we were going to this amazing gallery opening at the Photographer's Gallery. Beautiful place, and there was this, I think it was for David LaChapelle exhibition. I love his work, but it was quite a kind of posh do. And we were getting ready, and I had this sort of, as ever, something from a charity shop. So I had this sort of 1960s black draped cocktail dress with sequins on it, and the long black gloves and dramatic eye makeup and everything. And Chris had this very sort of swanky blue velvet jacket on he'd actually got from Henny's, and his posh Christian Dior glasses. And we were sort of getting ready, and I'd done my makeup, and I was fooling around. I had this Muji handbag, which is sort of black and gathered and sort of rayon, and I kind of stuck it on my head. And Chris said, "I dare you to go to the gallery like that." And I said, "Oh, you should know not to dare me." So all I did was I kind of did the zip up a little bit, and I put a little bit of light stuffing in it.
Like a turban.
It was exactly like a turban, yeah, and it had very thin, long handles, black fabric, so I just scooped them back to here and pinned them back. And we went to this opening, and I was sort of channeling kind of slightly ageing opera diva. That seems to be a thing with me. A little bit Maria Callas.
Yes.
But spelt the other way.
Yes, absolutely.
That should have been a character. I should have made that into a character.
There is time. There is
Get
time.
the right age for it now.
Come on, darling.
Jowls, darling. I have jowls. So yeah, we arrived at this thing, and there was this big hullabaloo with book signing going on in the bookshop at the gallery, and we sort of saw the staircase ahead of us, and we kind of just, as if nobody else was there.
Owned it.
We owned it, and we kind of ascended the staircase, and that was where were people going, who are they? And we went around the entire exhibition as if nobody else was there. I was being followed by one with a gigantic camera. So we went all around this show, sort of like this, just sort of looking at things and posing like we were in vogue.
Cool.
And then went down the stairs again and just went out onto the street. And as soon as we were out of earshot, we just ran down the street screaming our heads off.
Yeah,
It was brilliant.
absolutely.
So yeah, lots of...
And they didn't know
fun
what
things.
hit them, did they?
They didn't really know what was going on. But, you know, that's quite a good place to leave people, I think, sometimes. Slightly like, what the hell's that?
But it's making an entrance, isn't it? You say you pull yourself back out of places almost in a whisper, but you come in with a theatrical... You do. You don't say anything, Linda. You never need to say anything. You just arrive and everyone goes, oh, because you've always had that ability to be able to make an entrance. And I don't think that's made of... Because we're the same, we're rats, so we're not actually making an entrance. We just embody it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's not, I don't think it's necessarily an ego thing either.
No.
It's just like, if you go to a thing, you kind of want to add something to it.
You do.
Yeah.
Bring some value.
The event.
Yeah, exactly. And there have been lots of things or events that I've been to in Hastings and St Leonard's or wherever else, but specifically here where there have been parties and they've been costume parties, and you think, right, this is, they want to encourage people to dress up, because if you're not dressed at a costume party, you feel like an idiot.
You do.
Because you go there thinking you're going to feel, oh, that's all right, because nobody will be looking at me, and I'll just hide in this corner and it'll all be like, fine. And then you get there, you see people there and they've got jeans and a t-shirt on, and they're not so much part of the thing.
No, they can't
because
talk about what they're wearing.
Well, they haven't brought
the thing.
Entered into the spirit.
haven't entered into the spirit
Yeah.
of it. I mean, in the last few years, because I've done so much partying and so many things and everything, since I've been living up in Orr, I've been much more of a hermit. And because I've done a lot of my partying, I'm not in that zone anymore, so I don't go to stuff. I don't go to Jack in the Green and things like that, because I had such a good time doing it in the past. And my head is somewhere else. And when I came up here after my mum died, I was doing a lot of gardening, and I got involved in Orr in Bloom. And so I've just put that creative energy into different areas instead. And in a way, it's great that I had a place big enough where I was able to keep the things that I've made, because now I'm able to do this before I move on to whatever the next thing is.
Yeah. So the last hurrah.
Yeah, no, it's a phrase that's been around for years, and it just seemed like a kind of nice jolly phrase to use.
But it sums it up, doesn't it?
I guess it does really. Yeah, this will be underlining everything else, and there'll be people who have no idea who I am, who might come along and be entertained by it, and then there'll be other people who I've worked with, who are friends, people I haven't seen for years from here. There's a few people I know who are actually coming specially, which is really nice. People I've known for a long time, or people I've only just met. But again, it's about people coming together and having conversations about stuff, as much as it is about what I'm showing them. But also because I've worked with a lot of different photographers and I've done a lot of different collaborations, it kind of carries on with that theme, but it shows people the other aspects of what I've done, but it also shows their work too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've got some photographs in the other room that were done by Terry Hulfe years ago when I was in my flat in the Old Town. And Terry's got an amazing exhibition. He's got a proper like gallery retrospective happening over at Rye Art Gallery at the moment. Notes from the Landscape, which is his body of work from the last like 30 years odd. So it's kind of interesting to be in the same zone as some of these other creative people I've known all that time. And he's actually in his artist portrait section, he's very sweetly put a portrait of me in that, which is really nice, because I remember it took me straight back to when I was in that flat and what I was doing. And I did have hair at that point. I had the kind of earphones hair with a fringe, and when I was painting my eyelids and doing all of that fancy makeup. And you know, it's just kind of nice to be transported back to then as well, because it brings with it all the other memories and the different people.
Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. As a body of work, this is all catalogued, I'm hoping.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And what I'm also doing is there were just 100 pieces of art, which is the secret auction, but I've added 2 more because Keith and Rain bought 2 paintings from me years and years ago, and now she's developed motor neuron disease, so those 2 paintings of hers will be sold and the proceeds of those will go to motor neuron disease. But I've done a kind of bidding system so that people can come all week and put in a bid at any time. So I have a bid box and labels, so they fill in. Each thing that's in the auction has got a number on the frame or next to the piece, and they all have a reserve price. There'll be a catalogue up on the door in this room, and so they can look up the number and see what the reserve price is, and if they feel happy to make a bid above that reserve price, and put the date and the time of it, very importantly, in case 2 people bid the same, it gets embarrassing. And then they put it in a bid box, and that bid box doesn't get opened until after the show is finished on the 20th of June.
Said bid box.
Bid box, yeah.
It's like grab said bid box.
Woman handle it over here.
Woman handle it. So here we are.
There we go. Yeah, I had to do a special bid box, of course, because everything gets fancy signs and bid boxes. So.
Yeah.
So it has the Last Hurrah on the top of it, obviously. And then you open it up, and it's got this inside it, which is the bid box with the instructions, and
it's completely sealed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And then you pick up a label from that and fill it in, and chuck it in there. Bob's your uncle.
Marvellous.
So yeah, I've got the sort of brain that likes to make systems for things and thinking ahead. So I've tried to set this up, and there will be, obviously you need to put instructions up for people so they fully understand what they're entering themselves into. Oh, I've also made a certificate of authenticity. So anything that goes, gets an instant like postcard with it. So that can, if it's a painting, it can be stuck on the back of the picture. If it's an item, that can be kept separately. So that, there's, I'm not bloody Banksy, but, it's good to give people that.
Yeah, because you don't know how it's going to be received. You're going to have people that have seen your work and known your work for years.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
So they want to be...
it's kind of be that extra mile as well. Yeah. But, the other side of it is I'm doing a sheet on a clipboard, which will have at the top of it, in the event, should the piece that you bought ever be requested for an exhibition, would you be, willing to loan it back? So I'd like people to sign that, because you never know what's going to come out of anything. No. And if there was ever something in the future, then it would be nice to know that people were happy to loan things back again and have them in a show.
It's a great idea.
Because this is what I can do myself. I can't kind of take the work any further.
No.
Because of where I'm at in my life. But if anybody ever did want to do, well, like my friend Nicola's she's manages the Lee Bowery estate, and they've had this amazing show at the Tate. But she's kept all of his stuff for 30 years. Which is a big commitment as a manager of an archive. And people have said to me, well, you should keep your archive. And it's like, it's not going to happen. It's time I cleared my table. It really is.
I think that's a really healthy thing. Yeah. Because then creativity can't live in a stale environment. Absolutely. And this is not, I'm not suggesting for a minute any of this is stale, but it's a part of you that is stamped in time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then once that goes,
I have to free myself
the
up.
fresh white board that you've got
Yeah.
to play with, you've got another canvas, off we go again.
And I love how you're just like, don't know what it is, but
Oh,
you're
well, I
just
really
into
don't.
it.
I have to be
It's
honest.
like-
People say, what are you going to do? Where are you going to move to? I don't know. That's the whole bloody point,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly,
It's
yeah.
like, it's got, in order to make the space for new stuff,
Yeah.
you've got to let go of the old stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, huge.
So yeah, I don't know. And then they say, are you going to move away from Hastings? I have no idea. I mean, I've been here since 1986. And it would be good for me to have the opportunity to go and look at other places.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to move away. It's like, you know, once I don't own a property, then I can have the freedom to visit friends abroad,
Travel a bit.
Absolutely.
do a bit of travel, you know, whatever it is that comes up that seems to be the right thing to do. I feel I can't do that, and it's like bread and butter before cake, you know. I can't do that until I've actually made the space to do that, and I don't know what it is until I get there.
Absolutely.
But the process is the process that takes you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
And the
that's
last
kind of
hurrah is a big part of that. Well, it's the essential part of that process.
It's essential,
Isn't it?
yeah, absolutely that.
So when is it?
Well, it starts on Saturday the 14th of June.
That's very exciting.
And it finishes on Friday the 20th of June, and it will be open from 2 p.m. till 7 p.m. And I decided to do it like that because it means that I can have my mornings to get everything, you know, looking good in the right place and do my daily stuff, to be fair. And also, like, I think opening a little bit later means that anybody who's working or got kids or anything, it means that they've got the opportunity to come. If it's like, because it usually everything shuts at 5 o'clock, and it's like, well then what do you do? So I thought, it was actually a friend of mine who suggested it, and I thought it was a really, really good idea. So that's kind of the premise that I'm working on. So let's hope that that works, shall we?
Yeah.
I think it
Absolutely.
will. Absolutely, yeah.
It'll be amazing. I'm astonished.
Yeah.
At your, I love the fact that you're doing this. I love, because to me it always feels very healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And also, you know, getting the stuff out and going through, like in my Her Story room next door, there's just books and albums and folders which are all different parts of my life. You know, some personal stuff, but lots and lots of work stuff, and there might be people who come and who think, oh, I remember being at that gig, or people who are members of the Shady Pines who I used to sing with as well. And we had some fantastic photographs taken of us when we were singing in the Shady Pines. And Claire Hamill going to come, who was the original teacher for the Shadies as well. You know, actually loads of people, as I say, who I haven't seen for ages. So it's going to bring up all sorts of things for everybody who comes, and you never know what is going to come out of those conversations.
Absolutely.
You know, whether it's people who've known each other and not seen each other, or whether it's people who happen to meet here. Happenstance is an amazing thing, and having arenas for happenstance to happen, as it were.
Yeah.
You know, that's what a lot of what I've been involved in has been about. Having and Hastings is an arena, as I said in itself. So it's probably, you know, about the best place for these things to happen, as it were.
What I love about Linda is people think, oh, she's terrifying. No, she's not. She's a real sweetie.
Oh, I can
actually.
be.
Yes, well, indeed, we're rats. We if we need to, we have to bring it. But I think you're.
Do you know something that happened? See or last, you can't remember. Ed Boxall, you know, lovely local illustrator and musician, Ed Boxall, and he did a new book, which is about a little boy who gets lost at the carnival.
Children's book.
And somebody said to me, do you know that Ed's used you in a book? And I went, no, because he hasn't mentioned it to me. Anyway, so they told me about it and everything. So then I saw Ed, or he messaged me, and he said, I suppose I should have asked you, really. It's fine. He said, well, it's a strong woman who's looks quite fierce, this fierce tattooed strong woman that this little kid runs away from at the carnival, and then she actually sort of finds him and reunites him with his grandfather. So yeah, like, you know, a little pinch of fear is not a bad thing.
No.
But yeah, on the whole, you know, I only bite if I'm provoked.
Yeah, I mean, but it's courage for me. When what I see in your work is a lot of courage.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I just boldly go where I haven't boldly gone before.
Having the courage to be vulnerable in your work, having the courage to be out there in your work, I think that's the...
And again, I really hope that that's something that people get from when they come here, because there is a huge... a lot of these paintings haven't actually been exhibited anywhere, apart from in New York once, years and years ago, which was a fairly bizarre trip. But I can pretty much guarantee that anybody who comes will see things, whether it's photographs of me, in slightly worrying ways, or costume, or paintings, or drawings, and think, oh, I didn't know she did that.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge variety, but the same thread runs all the way through it. And that is a comment that I've often had from people, is that it doesn't matter whether it's a painting, or a costume, or a piece of ceramics, or a piece of textile, there is something which always indicates that it's your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the strength thing that you're talking
Definitely.
about coming through as well.
Yeah.
And staying with it, you know, continuing that line of being you, being the artist, being the creator. And you told me a lovely story of a friend who was about to go off and be a life coach, and now you're a performer.
Dave Bogue. Yeah, I met him at Lost Vagueness Festival outside Lewes. It was meant to be up in London, but they had some problem with the alcohol licence or something. So it ended up being in a field outside Lewes. And I went there. I often go places on my own. It's never bothered me. I've always had a really good experience. So I rocked up there with my transit van that I had at the time. And I kept seeing this guy around who was running around being ridiculous in various different costumes. And I thought, he's interesting. So we got talking, and then he introduced me to his mate Pinball Jeff from the Bikini Beach Band. And we spent the rest of the festival like being ridiculous. And he told me he'd just come back from Thailand, and he was going to be moving from London up to Hebden Bridge, and he was going to be a life coach. And I just looked at him and said, don't be so ridiculous. I said, I'm not a life coach. Don't be so insane. I said, you're a performer. Don't be so mad. Anyway, so we hung out a bit after the festival, and he went back off up to London to get his life sorted out before moving up north. And I'd been given this man's suit. And I thought, I bet that'll fit Dave. And I'd also been given a big bag of felt, proper lovely wool felt in cream and navy blue and red. And I kind of found myself making this character for him, Dr. Di Diath, because we often used to speak Welsh together.
Of course.
Speak Welsh all the time for some reason. And I'd had this other opportunity to join a show called The Good Ship Splendid, which had been playing up on the West Hill. And they had some funding to have different artists and different performers from other areas to go and work with them, because they were based up in Sheffield. And so somehow I ended up, actually a friend's daughter was working with them, and she sort of said, do you want to come and do this thing on The Good Ship Splendid? We're going to be doing it in Sheffield. And I was like, oh yeah. So I ended up taking Cupid the horse and Dave's panniers full of all his stuff from his motorbike, because that's how he was travelling up to Sheffield. And we stayed at Green Tops, which is a circus school place.
Nice. And
there was this amazing, huge, rambling, old, slightly decrepit theatre, which they now have they actually have a board who were restoring the place. It had been made into a furniture suppository, whatever.
Suppository. No, depository, darling.
So it was a bit run down, and like the electrics weren't terribly reliable, as I found out to my cost when I got stranded in the middle of the stage with no mic and no lights.
Oh,
so
fun!
Because I don't usually do stage work at all, because I'm weirdly, everybody watching just me thing is not my thing. Me galloping around, engaging with people.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's because people feed you. If you go as a character, you kind of get fed stuff, lines, and you get this relationship going, and that is way more interesting to me than being on a stage performing like that. It's a very different thing, and it's a whole different skill set, which I can kind of cobble up, but I prefer not to do that. So there I was stranded in the middle of the stage, but I had the costume with me for Dave, and I'd made these appliqued skeletons climbing out of the pockets of all this stuff, and this big like faked Hell's Angels patch on the back. So he was like, okay, so I'm going to help so-and-so mend the follow spot. I said, yes, and you're also doing this. And I gave him the costume that came with a little case with bits of business in it, and he ended up the second night, he got his nerve up and he started moving around amongst the audience and performing.
Right.
Now, God, it must be about, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. I mean, he's still performing. He's the Fireman Dave, and he does physical theatre, fire shows, a lot of it up around Hebden Bridge and all of that sort of area. Quite a big catchment area, actually. And sometimes he works down in London, sometimes he works in Saudi, and he does a lot of fire stuff, as I say, but he does, it's all character stuff as well.
Yeah.
So he has all these other different, and he still has a suit.
And he still plays.
Oh,
He's a performer player.
oh yeah, absolutely, and he's not a life coach. Put it that way. No, his profession is as a performer.
It's owning that, isn't it? It's having the courage to own that.
No, he rides the unicycles and does all sorts. He's the only person I know who's a juggler, because jugglers, funny old folk.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's allowed to sneak under the wire. But yeah, he's my only juggler.
Okay, jugglers out there.
It's just a bit, something about it. I don't know.
Bless you, darling. You've been amazing. We could sit here all day.
I know, but people
You
are so
do.
bored.
You do. No, they wouldn't. They really wouldn't.
You can't make them sit through that. It's not fair.
There will be another one of these at some point because Linda will go on and do something, and we'll catch up. But you've been astonishing, and thank you. Good luck with the Last Hurrah.
Oh, thanks
because
very
I'm
much.
sure it'll be amazing, and I love the way you've organised it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've tried to, make it so that, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, people come to my house and they leave like they've been G-forced. Nobody leaves empty-headed or empty-handed, I would like to say. And so, being able to break it down basically into 3 things so that people can take it a chunk at a time seemed like a good idea.
It's a very good idea. I want to come along and have a look and
Have a proper read.
have a proper route. Yes, I think that's important.
Definitely. Yeah.
You've been a darling.
Thank
Right,
you.
cheers
And
then.
as part of our wonderful town where we have plenty, you're an absolute.
More than enough.
You are. She's a darling. Linda King, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Fantastic. That's great.